Tiffany.
Hi, and we are your revenue insiders. Today we are sitting down with Jason Bay, founder and CEO of Outbound Squad. If you've spent any time in outbound sales over the last 5 years, you probably listened to his podcast or read some of his LinkedIn posts. He's got some of the biggest customers out there with strong B2B teams like Gong, Zoom, Shopify, Monday.com. The list goes on and on. So Jason is actually based in Seattle, like Tiffany and I, which is how I met Jason. We were both part of Pavilion here in Seattle, and he reached out looking to get connected in the Seattle area. And I found what he offers to be fascinating, and I know our audience will be very interested as well. So, Jason, thank you for joining. Really excited to have you here.
Yeah, I'm excited too. You two definitely understand what it's like to be in Seattle right now, where it's like we're right on the cusp of spring and the sun is almost about to come out and all that stuff. So I'm new here. I'm from the Pacific Northwest, but I'm relatively new to Seattle. But always good to
today is
jam
quite
with
the
other folks in the
Seattle day
area.
too. Like we've had some nice sunny days, and it is just gross out today.
Today is so gross. I don't want to leave my house, but I'm going to force myself to. Well, we're going to jump right in, Jason. And one thing that I am super excited to talk to you about and learn more about is you are launching the first, and you claim only, I want to hear more about this, outbound framework and methodology. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So the kind of lead in and build up for this, I think, is important. Outbound is arguably the hardest that it's ever been since we had to, back in the day, open up the phone book and go like either door to door or just manually dial off the phone, right? So since we've had like email sequences and access to phone numbers and all of that kind of good stuff, it's been very hard. I mean, the data shows that the average reply rate to an email is less than 1%. I mean, do you two
No,
pick
I
up your
like
phone when
pay for
unknown numbers call
service
you?
to
If
like
Never.
filter out the calls.
I do too.
Yeah.
Tiffany told me
So
service. So
yeah, and the irony is that I teach cold calling. Our firm teaches cold calling to all of thousands of sales reps. Yet you ain't going to get me on the phone unless I'm answer it
Yeah, or I'm
unexpectedly on
looking, right?
accident,
If I like
right?
have been looking at your website and I get a call, I might answer that. That's like the one exception that comes through.
So the predictable revenue era of outbound like officially ended like 5 or 6 years ago. There was for those listening, I would assume that most of you know what predictable revenue is, but Aaron Ross came out with a book in 2011, didn't pioneer this idea, but really popularized this idea of, hey, we're going to break apart the sales function into 3 roles. We're going to have people that do outbound and pipe gen. We're going to have people that close, our account executives, and then we're going to have account managers or folks that, do the farming, so to speak. And that was like really great. But what it created was an entire generation of salespeople that, for lack of a better way of saying it, feel like they're above doing outbound pipe gen. Like they're above having to build
so
pipeline.
correct on that.
So I can't tell you how many companies we get brought into where they call it an outbound pivot, right? They want to pivot the organization to be more outbound. I'm sure you two have seen this a lot. But you have a culture shift really that needs to happen because you have account executives that were hired with the expectation that they were literally told they wouldn't have to outbound.
Yeah.
And it's treated as this like junior activity when it's one of the hardest things to do in the job. Like building pipeline is really, really hard. So we got to where we are today because the predictable revenue era really spawned this, I'm calling it the sales engagement gold rush, where we had outreach, local to Seattle, right? SalesLoft, like these were companies that were valued at multiple billions of dollars to support the workflow and process of this predictable revenue model. And then we sort of shot ourselves in the foot, right? I mean, 2024 rolls around and Gong, Zoom Info, Clary, I mean, all of these companies now have like, you can't find a sales tool without a sequencing functionality in it. So it's like really desensitized people to like the emails. It's desensitized people to the calls. LinkedIn is starting to become a mess. And now there's all of this AI stuff, right? And last but not least, I'll kind of pause because I know I've been monologuing quite a bit, is like right now we're in the AI era, right? And this era is a lot about displacement. So we're looking at all of these activities. SDR teams are being replaced by AI. It's happening a lot. I don't think that it's necessarily the right move at a lot of companies, but I have a client that sells an enterprise database solution that said, we're not going to let sales reps touch any of our inbound leads. So all of the stuff between a demo request and a pure cold outbound lead, so webinar signups, case studies, like people that are signing up for their free version of their product, they are only letting AI agents interact. I think that's a terrible move, and we could talk about why that is. But that's like what these companies are doing right now. So it's kind of a scary time. And the reason why we came up with the methodology, it's called too good to ignore. We're in an era right now where as a sales rep, you have to be too good to ignore in order to stand out. And we can talk about the pillars of that and what that means, but we're in an era where you cannot be average and succeed at building pipeline anymore. Average emails, like that's average is just the floor now. AI can send better than most
It's
average reps can. So it's your ability to differentiate
It is
yourself,
so
which
fascinating.
is really
Kelly
big.
and I have been circling this topic for like a few of the last like episodes that we've talked through, I feel like, around this concept of what's going on with pipe gen building and outbounding and communications, and where does AI fit in versus where do people fit into it. And at the end of the day, at least right now, people are still the buyers. And so people have to fit in somewhere. I agree with you. Like an all AI SDR team is not the move, or an agent that touches everything before it gets to a certain point. It just feels, as a buyer, as someone who has bought a lot of things or researched a lot of things, like I can tell and I'm annoyed. Like when I'm at the point where I want to engage with someone, I want to engage. And I can tell when it's an AI sequence. But AI has a place in all of this. I'm curious if this is part of your methodology around like where you should be leveraging, whether it's like tools. I saw one of your LinkedIn posts around like evolving from chats to agents or like being left behind. Like, where does that fit into your overall methodology that you're rolling out?
Yeah. So the 3-part framework is Disqualify, Offer, and Provoke. So we've worked with 250 sales teams in the last 6 or 7 years, and it's about 20,000 sales reps. And there are very prominent patterns in the teams that do really well at pipe gen, especially the reps that do well at pipe gen. The archetype that I would describe that does well is I would call them an owner. Every sales leader wants their reps to own their book of business, right? To be an operator, an owner. It's not the grinders and the people that are really good at hammering out the activity. And in our clients, it's not really, I call them the cyborgs. It's not the people that are really great at leveraging AI either. It's the people that really own, just like a business owner, their time. So I'll kind of weave in how AI fits into this here, Tiffany. So Disqualify, what the best sales organizations do is they set up a system that allows the rep to say no to a lot of accounts and opportunities that they could be reaching out to. So I am a really big fan. I was taught the martini glass shaped pipeline. So we don't want our pipeline to look like a funnel. We want it to look like a martini glass. We're going to shrink the top of funnel, and it's about going really deep on fewer opportunities that have a higher propensity to buy. You couldn't ask for a better use case of AI. So I'll give you an example. We worked with a client that sells cybersecurity solutions, and like their clients are like Pepsi, Costco, like those types of businesses. And it's specifically cybersecurity in the manufacturing plant, right? So it's not IT, it is OT, operational technology. So for example, in a warehouse on Pepsi, someone might be using their cell phone to hotspot a machine because the internet's down and that you could get hacked or whatever, right? Long story short, what we found through a lot of the AI analysis was, hey, there's 10 industry verticals you reach out to, but there's really 2 where you guys are winning the most right now. You win almost all of the competitive deals. You win faster. The deals are larger, et cetera. So we said, outbound team, we're going to say no to 6 out of those 8 industry verticals. And we're only going to go in on these 2. And oh, by the way, there's 5 personas. We're not going to focus on 5 personas because 2 of them are really important to show up to the first meeting. Could you do this without AI? Yes, you could work with an ops person like Tiffany, someone like yourself and like your team, let's say, and you could do all of this like analysis and spend hours and try to sell people on it, or you could just open up Claude and do it in like 5 minutes. You know? So from a disqualify standpoint, it's where am I pointing my effort? Where am I asking the team to point their efforts? And how can I do that in a way where the propensity to buy from these folks or to engage is very high and I'm stacking the odds in our favor? So I'll pause there. That's the first pillar, is disqualify. What are we going to say no to? That's the first decision that we have to make.
You're so right. This is where so many organizations really struggle. I'm finding because pipeline is hard to find, there's a fear of saying no. And just when you're a seller, you always learn like first to no, like say no. But in reality, when your pipeline's really low and someone's inspecting your pipeline, people are more likely to say yes when they shouldn't. So I'm curious, before we go into the other two parts of it, how do you help someone understand why it's so important? How do you get them to flip that mindset? Because I just see, as people, they want to fill their pipeline, even though we know and the numbers show they're not going to turn that pipeline into closed deals.
Yeah. So I think it's the old people buy based on emotion, but justify with logic.
Totally.
For some reason, when we get into sales leadership, especially at the executive level, like we go super logical and we forget to actually sell. Like you have to sell. Like when we get hired by an organization to come in, I always joke with them like this: the sale hasn't ended. Like we still have to sell your reps at every single enablement session that we do with them. When we build out your playbook and the messaging, we have to sell you on this and get you excited about it. So we can bring all the data that we want with it, but I think one of the biggest things, Ryan Longfield is probably one of the most talented sales leaders that I've worked with. He was the previous CRO at Gong. He brought us into Shopify. And the dude is just a masterful storyteller. Like there was a whole narrative around why Shopify has to do outbound and how it's such an essential part for the company's future and how you as an individual, here's how you win doing that. And I think with this, Kelly, to answer your question around the disqualification, it's, hey, do we have internal champions at our company, reps that are already doing this? And can we spread those stories internally? And as a enablement professional or as a director of sales that has managers reporting to them, you should be facilitating these stories and giving them to your managers to share. That was one of the things I learned as a first-time sales manager at 19 when I was managing college students running house painting businesses, going door to door. That was my first sales job, was going door to door selling house painting services. And my VP of sales, Dan, was so brilliant at that. He was like, hey, on Barry's team over there, this rep, Eric, he's doing this thing. I want you to tell Susie on your team about this and like get her really excited about it. And like, honestly, we didn't have great data at that point. So I didn't even need the data to back it up. I just said, this is working for so-and-so. And I think we forget to do that sometimes, that we can build the best programs ever and like have all of it operationalized and all of the steps and like all of this kind of stuff. But what about the stories? Like
I
that's a
mean, it's a bit
huge
of a
part of it.
tangent off your methodology, but I totally agree. And I think it's really important for people in like the ops role to hear that you often have to go through a sales process internally for change management. You have to do the discovery, you have to understand the solution fit, like all you do the negotiations with internal resources to make things happen. And I find that people are so much more successful at change management when they take that approach that you're describing. And like people who can storytell on top of that are just like immensely successful in driving projects forward. I do agree because I similar to Kelly, I've seen a lot of
100%.
resistance to pulling pipeline away from people, even if you can show them with data it's not good pipeline. Like, well, I can, let me have it, let me do something with it. I can nurture it, I can make some connections, and it's never the right use of time though.
Yes, and the story is always more interesting than the data anyways. Like think about like multi-threading is a common thing that an ops team would like look at really detailed analysis around, right? One of my clients also sells a cybersecurity solution, found that hey, the win rate's a little higher when we bring in our SE in the first call. So then they started looking at like all of the calls didn't have the SEs, and they started rolling out like, hey, it's required and we're doing this. And it's like what was much more powerful is when they kind of stepped back and they were like, hey, you guys, let's think about the buyer for a second, right? You have a cybersecurity buyer, someone that's very technical coming onto that first call. And when we listen to a lot of those calls, here's a lot of what they said in those calls. Hey, can I speak to one of your experts? Can we get a custom demo to show us how this would work in our specific? And they were asking all of these things. And the story was just like, hey, we're offering a better buying experience for them by bringing in this individual. Oh, by the way, the data supports that too. It's like you need both. And I think that we can just get so fixated on data sometimes.
I would agree with you. Okay, so we've disqualified. What are we doing next?
Yep. Let me give like a second like action. Like here's what you could do. So if you're in ops or enablement and or you're a sales leader, look at the last 6 weeks of or 6 months rather of closed won and closed lost data. and just look at patterns in like the industries and niches on the account level. Look at like what moves fast through the sales pipeline. Look where the deals are the largest, like all of that kind of stuff. And you can get some really good criteria to filter on. So the second pillar is offer. There's some really interesting data around the buyer's experience right now that I think is really important to start with. And most buyers are pretty sick of hopping on sales calls. I mean, all of the Gartner data would show you that 3/4 of them preferred not to interact with a sales rep, right? Which is kind of sad, being honest. But I think the more compelling piece is Rain Group did a big study of B2B buyers, and they said that 58% of the meetings that they spend time with sales reps is a complete waste of time. So over half of the time, they regret spending time with a salesperson. And the Gartner's got more data that over half of the purchases they make, they experience buyer's regret. So think about how jaded the buyer is hopping on sales calls. So the offer, the idea behind this is like, I got to give them a compelling reason to spend time with me. And it can't just be take a look at our solution, because around 3% of your market at any given time is actively buying. So how do we entice that other 97%? And it's through compelling offers. The data on Gong, like we just studied 85 million cold emails last year with them. Cold emails with the presence of an offer will have a reply rate that is 28% higher than just simply asking them for time. So let's talk about what an offer is. I worked with a company that sells an automated welding solution. So think about really large RVs and trailers. A lot of that has to be manually welded by a human. And guess what? Most people right now, like the trades, blue collar jobs, are having a heck of a time getting people to want to do those types of jobs. So there's a huge shortage of welders. Okay. So the first type of offer that anyone here can do and take back to their team is what I call selling the blind date. So if I'm talking to you, Kelly, and Tiffany, you're my account executive, I would say, hey, Kelly, by the way, I want to set you up with Tiffany because she's got about a decade of experience working with companies like Caterpillar, and they're automating traditionally really hard to automate parts like what you have over at XYZ company. And she'll also tell you a little bit more about how they're handling the welder shortage. If nothing else, you get some really good ideas you can take back to your team. So that's selling the blind date. It's if I'm an SDR, sell the expertise of the account executive. If I'm an account executive, bring in an SE, sell the expertise of my SE. If I sell ed tech and I used to be a teacher and I'm talking to educators, tell them that I used to be a teacher and I can share what that experience is like. And I think this is something that is often overlooked.
Easy and so simple.
It's so easy.
But
this
no,
is like,
people are not doing that. I don't know. I'm
no,
not
they're
doing
not.
that in my inbox.
Yeah, you have to standardize. This is like, this is what you have to do in enablement, right? I mean, you have to standardize these 2 and 3 liners. So it's like, it's pitching, you do that in a cold call, you can do that in a cold email. I mean, it's great. So that's like one type of offer. The other one, I'll give you a couple of other types. One is, I call it one to many. You can take a marketing asset and you can use that, the insights from that, as a reason to meet too. The marketing asset has to be really good though. So it can't be like an 80-page white paper that sucks. Okay. So it's got to be one of my clients, they sell a customer, like outsourced customer support. So I think you two would get a kick out of this because we're in the Pacific Northwest. They sell to a lot of outdoor brands like Patagonia, North Face, Columbia. They worked with a third party to mystery shop 300 e-com businesses. And what they would do is they would figure out like response time via chat. Do they have chat? What hours is chat available? All these stuff that affects the conversion rate into a sale. So the way that they would open the cold calls is they would say, Tiffany, this is Jason. I was calling you. I'm not sure if you're aware, but your response time via chat is 3 times longer than the North Face and Columbia. And I wanted to talk to you about that because we mystery shopped you and a few other competing brands. Do you got a minute for me to share more? Every time when I would listen to the call recordings, it was like an emotional, visceral response. The prospect honestly was kind of pissed off. They're like, what? What are you talking about? And it immediately got their attention. And like, think about that insight. People talk about Challenger sale and like all of this other kind of stuff. And we can talk about the misconceptions with Challenger, but the teach, tailor, take control, teach, that is a teaching moment right there. It doesn't get any better than that. Like that's a type of offer too. And it's also a really good example of the marketing team and the sales team working together, where marketing is like really creating this like pillar piece of content that like every buyer would love to get their hands on. So you got to create that type of stuff to really make the outbound stick out. So to kind of backtrack a bit, The thing that really makes outbound emails and phone calls and all of that stuff really blend in is when there's just nothing to give. There's no
I
give.
That's totally
There's no
true because
give
you
at
see
all.
a lot of like very highly personalized, clearly AI driven outbound emails that are like they'll pull like where I went to school, they'll pull something like they find all this like they'll pull the revenue insiders, they pull all this information and it's great, like it's very personalized, but like I have no like there's nothing about what they're selling. Like it's just like you want to grab time, like that's the end result. And like I get the same email with the same five basic clips or reference to two LinkedIn posts on the regular basis. And so like you can only go so far with that personalization before like you're drowning in a sea of everyone doing the same thing. I'm curious, Jason, is there like a way to think about the right offer to put together based on like either the data you have available or the type of maybe role that you're in that works best that you've seen?
Yeah, the blind date is a great place for anyone to start. Like anyone can start doing that immediately after this, rep, leader, etc. I gave you an example of like a one to many offer, a marketing asset that you can leverage. The other type of offer is more one to one. So if you sell enterprise or strategic, like think about what you could offer and do for them to give them a taste of what it's like to like meet with you. It really depends on like, so examples of that would be like if you sell an e-com solution, going onto the website and checking out something through the cart and creating like a 60-second video or a Google Doc or something that's got that summarized. You could offer workshops. There's all kinds of stuff that you could offer. I think that the first question I would ask is, can you visually show someone something? Not all solutions are going to be like that, right? Is it something visible I can see on the web about their website? Can I do a store visit? Can I do something like that? And then I think the second thing is the insight. Is there something that I can share with them that's insightful? I mean, like now you have Claude and we use Perplexity, but whatever you use, you can build some of those insights, right? You can do some of that deep research and build some of those insights to share. So I would be thinking about how technical is it that what you sell, and can you show them their actual problem? If you can show them their problem, you should do that. If you cannot show them their problem, the insight driven way is a great way to do it. And then last but not least, again, for enterprise and strat, if there's something that you can do, the ground swelling motion, if you can talk to people on their team, that is also a form of an offer. Hey, Kelly, I talked to Tiffany and so on your team about some of the enablement that hasn't been sticking, with your reps, specifically around cold calling. I would love to share with you how we guided Shopify through that.
I would get any enabler on the phone in 2 seconds because they're going to be like, who'd you talk to and what they say? I want to know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you have to be careful with that, obviously, but I do think there's something there. And I loved your example that around we went to your competitor's website and their response rate, because the part of your brain that activates is so powerful in a conversation.
Yeah. It essentially
Yep.
puts you into fight or flight
100%.
mode as like an executor. It's like I have to like I'm either going to hear about this from someone else that I need to deal with, or like I need to go deal with this problem myself.
Yep. The acid test I always say with the offer is, what could you offer that the buyer would feel irresponsible for saying no to? It
That's
would
good.
be irresponsible for the buyer to say no to getting an insight from 300 other e-com businesses that they mystery shop that stack ranks your customer support abilities.
Oh, that's like, so at the end of our episodes, we always ask a point of view question. And I feel like that has to be our point of view question. We'll let you do another one, but I'm like, oh, I got to come
I
up
was like, I
with
was
that.
stressing out about that question too. I was writing stuff down
You've
when you
already
said
got
that.
it. You've already got
Brain
it.
is spinning right now.
I know. I'm learning so much and I love this. This is an area, it's funny. One of the first roles I had in leadership was running a BDR team, but it was in 2017. And so the way you run, to your point, a BDR team now is very different, wildly different. Okay, so we've done the first two. Is there anything else you wanted to cover on the second part of your methodology?
Nope. Yeah. So disqualify, offer. The last one's provoke. So provoke is, Tiffany, you mentioned, hey, like, yeah, you can know everything about me and where I went to school and all about my favorite color and like books to read, but like, why should I take action? There's three fundamental questions that we have to answer. It's, why change? Why now? Why you? Right? These are very fundamental sales questions. So we do that through the three T's. It's trigger, tension, trust. So every message, I think you two will appreciate this being an ops and enablement. what we struggled with when we're teaching this was, okay, we have like a way that we message over the email. We have a different framework that we teach the message over the phone. And then when we go to talk about social, it's another framework. We're like, this is too many frameworks. It's too many things to remember. A reverse pitch via phone, reply method via cold email. I'm like, it's just too much. So we said, there is a universal framework at play here, and it's trigger, tension, trust. The trigger is, that's the why now. Why am I reaching out to you? That is the, if I sell an HR solution that helps with international hiring and compliance, it's, I saw you're hiring in Italy and France, right? The tension is the problem. That's the why change. So what I recommend is that we think of tension in buckets. There's typically, depending on how complex the solution is that you sell, of course, there's typically like 2 or 3 buckets, tension buckets, problem buckets, if you will, that you solve. So the tension bucket right there is around compliance. There's all kinds of stuff that fit into that bucket, but international hiring is a really big compliance piece that requires a ton of manual work for a small business to be able to pull off. So it's, saw that you're hiring in France and Italy. Not sure if you come across this, but a lot of HR leaders that we speak with share that it's tough to stay compliant without eating up your entire week, and you'd rather spend that time on, capturing top talent or hiring top talent. Some sort of problem statement like that. The trust piece is social proof. It's why you. That's the question that we're answering. And we need a 1 sentence like customer snippet. We recently helped XYZ company with this. So that framework can apply in a cold call, where in the cold call, I like permission-based openers. Hello, yep, this is Jason. I was calling because I saw that you guys are doing some international hiring right now. Do you got a minute for me to share a little bit more about why I called you specifically? Yes, cool. Trigger, tension, trust. Again, saw you're doing international hiring. Here's the problem that we usually hear with that. Here's how we help. Is this something that's remotely close to what you're working on right now? Boom. And then I have a cold call, right? Cold email, same framework. Hi, Tiffany. Boom. Trigger, saw this thing. Tension. Not sure if you're running across this, but this might be a problem you're having. Trust. Here's another company that we helped. And then our CTA. And the CTA ideally is an offer-based CTA. Maybe instead of asking for 30 minutes of their time, which the stats from Gong show that decreases your reply rate by 44% if you ask for time directly, versus asking for interested in chatting further, versus making an offer. I'd like to put you in touch with Kelly. She recently helped XYZ company with this transition. If nothing else, you'll get some really good tips on how to handle the compliance piece. So trigger, tension, trust is the messaging framework. We have to provoke action. It's not enough to just share a vanilla message of, I saw you're doing this and it looks like you're really awesome. Here's what we sell. Do you want to chat about it? We have to provoke action.
I like it. Okay. I have a question for you. Because you mentioned it a little bit earlier. When I hear why now, why you, I think corporate visions, like that's some of the methodology base there. But then you also talked about Challenger, and you talked about the misconceptions there. I would love to understand, what are those misconceptions that maybe we're missing?
I think with Challenger, the biggest misconception is that people feel like they have to be assholes to their buyers and like challenge them.
Thank you for saying that.
So,
I feel that way with Sandler too. But
yeah, with Sandler, I'm just like, this sales methodology was created in the 60s. So and I'm saying that on a recorded call. So I think that
something like that similar.
So I think with Challenger, I love Challenger, big fan of Challenger. I think that the commercial insight and the perspective that you are challenging and the way that folks approach things, like that's really Challenger. Challenger would be you hopping on a sales call with me for the first time and I say, hey, I want to talk about something that is a really big challenge. And I would show a Gartner stat that says, reps forget 92% of what they learn within 30 days of learning it. We have a perspective on this around why that's happening. And like what I would point to is, it's not because they don't get taught great tips and tricks and tactics and strategies and all that kind of stuff. It's that typically when this stuff is rolled out, one, there isn't buy-in. There's no tailoring or collaboration with the managers to make sure that they had input. The manager reinforcement plan is not even a part of the game plan. They don't look at the tools and workflow that enable them to do this. And they don't think about like, how are we making this really simple for them to take action? Like that would be the conversation. That's me challenging a common way that people approach things and then our perspective on it. That's what Challenger is, I think. in a nutshell. It's educating.
The challenge that I have with a lot of the sales methodologies that I think is lacking in yours and I appreciate is that most sales methodologies still assume the buyer is incompetent or they don't understand things. And right now in the world of AI, the buyer is, even if they didn't know before you sent an email or the first conversation, by the time this like you're on the phone with them, if they picked up the call, they have some idea of the problem they're talking about. They've used whatever LLM of choice, they've Googled it. Like there's just so much information. And so many of these sales methodologies assume so much education about the problem versus understanding what the problem is and where that like trigger point is from an emotional response perspective that in the buyer. And I like that it serves itself well in outbound that you don't have that perception anywhere embedded into the methodology, that this is truly like about finding the right point in wherever you're selling to that's most necessary to like really engage that fight or flight kind of perspective or that emotional like response, and then reinforce it with like logic and an offer to help them fix it.
Yes. 100%. Like we went through this thing with the internet and search. It was called zero moment of truth. Google coined this like ZMOT is what they called it. And it was this idea that I don't need to talk to salespeople in order to get answers to my questions anymore. I don't need to talk to someone about what they think of that restaurant. I could look at review sites. We're going through that with
Hmm.
B2B buyers right now too. I really don't think that I don't believe that you can educate a buyer on a problem that they are not already aware of. I think you can
Yeah.
educate them on the root cause of it. And I think that you can educate them on a perspective maybe that you have about it. But like I think of like what I sell, I'm like, really? You don't think that like every revenue leader that I talk with knows that they need more pipeline? Come on.
Yeah.
That's like the Captain Obvious moment for them, right? It's like, tell me why this is happening. Tell me why the way that we're fixing it right now is not going to stick, or it might take longer than I want it to. So I think that you really have an opportunity to think about that stuff. And to your point about treating buyers like they're stupid, I mean, like, dude, I just would not want a process that speaks down to the people that I'm selling to. They're in the business doing the thing that I am not on a daily basis. And that's true for whatever you sell. Like they are in that business. Like they are so much more nuanced and understanding of their business than you could ever be as a salesperson. And you have this very narrow window of expertise that you can bring in because you talk to probably dozens or hundreds of their peers and they don't. So I think that like wanting to help and that's more servant approach, I really like, while maintaining a position of like, I'm a peer.
I have one more question for you. I know that we are about at time, but you at the beginning of this talked about the AE and the AE who
Mhm.
thinks prospecting is too junior for them, that an SDR and a marketing team should be feeding them warm leads. I see this everywhere I go. And I also see the struggle because it's not just the AE that struggles with this concept. It's the AE frontline manager who also grew up in that world and doesn't know how to coach their teams on how to do this well. And more importantly, doesn't know how to hold them accountable to doing that because in the back of their mind also doesn't think they should be doing this. So when you think, again, I'm an enablement person. So when you think about the behavior change, how are you doing that with teams to get the AE and the frontline manager to understand, like, you got to wake up. This is the new reality. And if you want to hit your number, this is what you have to do. Like, how are you having those conversations?
Yeah, I think it starts at the story level in the C suite or SVP level of pushing the narrative down, right? On why we need to do this, why it's essential for our future, why it's essential for you as a rep to win. And the best thing that you can do is just a simple math exercise and look at what that person's pipeline looks like in the next 12 months.
Okay, we are at a point in go ahead, Jason, sorry.
No, no, it's okay. It's like I think that like the story that their pipeline tells, like that's oftentimes the easiest thing to do. The other thing I've found with frontline managers and AEs, a big reason why they are resistant to it is really rooted and
Mhm.
based, I think, in shame.
Yeah.
And if I've been in an AE for 10 years and I haven't really outbounded in the last 3 or 4 years, I don't know what I'm doing. That's kind of not something I'm going to be really open and forthcoming about. And as a manager, if I never had to do it because I sold during the best economic time America has ever had in its history from 2009 to 2020, and then like a little blip there and then through 2022, yeah, for my own job security, I'm probably not going to admit that I don't know how to do this. So I think that having a level of vulnerability there and just saying like, hey, um, we haven't done this in a little while, and we're going to like enable the, I don't know if we can use profanity in your podcast, so I won't. We're going
You
to,
definitely
you
can.
know, so we're going to enable the beep out of you, and so that to teach you how to do this. I think that gold standard for what that looks like, we can't just ask people to pipe gen and not give them the strategy.
Yeah.
Like we have to be the personal trainer, give them the workout plan, give them the meal plan, hold them accountable, coach them through it, etc.
And from the ops standpoint, I think it's so important to understand this isn't going to change overnight, too. There's going to be a buildup to what outbound looks like on day one. And then after you hire Jason and his amazing team, like when do you start seeing changes in it? Because I think oftentimes when you're building your revenue models, you're like, this year we're switching to an outbound AE team and they expect to get those great numbers day one. And if you don't have enablement or anything ahead of time, you're falling short from day one, which isn't great.
Yeah. One last thing, sorry, is dude, you might not have the right team either.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, you're so right.
No, I think
Sorry,
that that's a
Tiffany,
great
didn't mean to
hot
cut
take.
you
I
off
was just
there.
gonna to layer onto that though and say, I think that having a methodology like a blank slate starting point for everyone helps people feel like they're on an even playing field and they're not like it's not a everyone go and prospect. That's now your job, like to go pipeline and do outbound. Then they're like, I don't have the tools. Like this person knows and I don't know. I'm just copying what they're doing on LinkedIn or reposting company marketing stuff. I'm just not sure what to do. But when you come in for the whole team with a methodology, you really do create that blank slate to see where people can adopt and learn and where people are unwilling and maybe are not the right fit because they just were lucky during that economic boom and not actually have not built any skills and are not willing to build those skills at this point in their career. And I think that that's an important piece to figure out before you just start cutting people away because they're not generating pipe gen or they're not outbounding. Like there's a window there where you need to help them build the skills and see where they're at.
I think we definitely need a part two to this episode because the fact that Tiffany and I have interrupted you maybe 7 times, Jason, is because we're very excited about what you're talking about. And I think it's something that is a hot topic for every CRO that we're talking to these days. So thank you. We'll be inviting you back. But before we leave today, is there anything we didn't ask you today that you think's really important for everyone to know?
You had me think about the question before we started hitting record. The other question that I think is really good is, I can't remember, Tim Ferriss or someone like this, I heard it from, what does addition by subtraction look like? So I think like when we're building out process, they tend to get really bloated over time where you've like added so many things to it. And I'll ask the CROs and VPs of sales sometimes, like, when's the last time you were a rep for a day? Like, have you tried like adding an order form in Salesforce? It takes like 90 minutes, dude, for an SMB sales cycle to do that. It's crazy, So I think if you had to subtract in order to achieve the outcome, what does that look like? Like, what could we take away? That's oftentimes a better
I love
answer.
that. I think that there is so much more to unpack with process evolution that needs to happen right now at the speed that tools are moving. And I think that is spot on. I think something even Kelly and I in our little 2-person shop can think of because we have overcomplicated a number of things in our first year class. So
I
I
hear
think
you.
it's a great one to
This one does.
Yeah.
Keep it simple, stupid, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, where does everyone find you? Because I know people are going to be very hungry for more information on this.
Yeah. So there's 2 places. One of them is free. I went in a studio here in Seattle for an entire day and recorded a 3-hour long masterclass. And we're giving it away for free. So the idea here is with this methodology and approach, like we want every rep and manager to have free access to this. And just we want you to get as much value as possible. So it's outboundsquad.com/masterclass. It's got everything from the disqualification stuff that we talked about. We talked about how to leverage AI, how to control the phone conversation, how to own the email inbox, how to handle objections. It's really built like for the rep and like the execution, like those skills, like what's working right now. And then the other place would just be our website, outboundsquad.com. So if you're, running a big sales org and you're like, we need to like do more of the stuff that, Jason talked about today, I would love to talk to you. If you're a team that's just rolling out, maybe your first SDR team, we help a lot with that too. So outboundsquad.com is going to be the best place to get a hold of us, and outboundsquad.com/masterclass is where you can check out
Well, like
the free
Kelly
course.
said, we are definitely going to have you back because we had a whole bunch of other questions we had talked about and we got nowhere near them. So there's a lot more to discuss. So soon for sure. Yeah. Thanks so much, Jason.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. And if you are not following us or subscribed, please make sure to hit the follow and subscribe button so that you can help others find this podcast. Thanks, everyone.